Let's delve into one of the lesser-known aspects of World War II, Benito Mussolini's fixation on Adolf Hitler. This obsession over time became one of the driving factors behind Italy's involvement in the war and Mussolini's increasing subordination to the Third Reich. Mussolini was the original pioneer of fascism, establishing his regime in Italy over a decade before Hitler came to power. Yet as the years went on, it seemed that Mussolini, once a figure who dominated the European political landscape, was becoming increasingly overshadowed by his German counterpart. This is a story of political ambitions, personal insecurities, and the catastrophic consequences of Mussolini's attempt to link his fate to that of Hitler's. Mussolini. The early fascist icon Benito Mussolini rose to power in Italy in 1922, long before Hitler's name was known in international politics. In fact, Hitler admired Mussolini greatly in the early years of his political career. The Italian dictator had established a fascist state, rooted in ultranationalism, authoritarianism, and militarism. His regime became a blueprint for what Hitler would later implement in Germany. By the mid-1930s, however, the dynamic between the two leaders began to shift. Hitler's rise to power in 1933 and his subsequent rapid military expansion placed him at the forefront of European politics. Meanwhile, Mussolini's ambitions in North Africa and the Mediterranean had stalled. His costly campaign in Ethiopia, then Abyssinia, although initially victorious, had drained Italy's resources and provoked international condemnation. As Mussolini's fortunes began to wane, Hitler's influence was rapidly growing. Mussolini's admiration for Hitler. As much as Mussolini was once the admired figure of fascism, by the late 1930s it was clear that Hitler had surpassed him. Mussolini, aware of this, seemed increasingly eager to secure a place by Hitler's side. He recognized that aligning with Germany could potentially elevate Italy's position on the global stage. And in Hitler, Mussolini saw an opportunity to maintain his relevance. This newfound admiration wasn't entirely mutual. Hitler respected Mussolini for his early contributions to the fascist cause, but as time went on, he viewed Mussolini more as a useful ally than an equal. The balance of power in their relationship shifted decisively in Hitler's favor as Germany's military and political strength far outstripped that of Italy. Still, Mussolini appeared to seek Hitler's approval. The Italian dictator seemed to take cues from Hitler in both military and political maneuvers. Despite his early disdain for Nazism's racial ideology, which conflicted with the original tenets of Italian fascism, Mussolini began implementing anti-Semitic laws in Italy, mirroring Germany's policies, though with much less enthusiasm from the Italian public and even parts of his own regime. The Pact of Steel, a formal alliance. In May 1939, the relationship between Hitler and Mussolini became formalized through the signing of the Pact of Steel, a military and political alliance that committed Italy and Germany to support one another in the event of war. While Hitler saw this as a strategic partnership that would bolster his efforts in Europe, Mussolini was perhaps more interested in gaining favor with the Nazi regime and ensuring Italy's place at the negotiating table of European power. At this point, Mussolini's leadership had already begun to decline. The Italian economy was struggling, its military was ill-equipped, and public support for Mussolini was waning. Despite these issues, Mussolini was eager to portray himself as a key player in Hitler's ambitions. However, behind the scenes, the relationship between the two men was anything but equal. Mussolini, aware of Germany's growing military might, became increasingly deferential toward Hitler, even when he had reservations about the German leader's decisions. For example, when Hitler invaded Poland in September 1939, sparking the outbreak of World War II, Mussolini was caught off guard. Italy was unprepared for war, and Mussolini hadn't anticipated such rapid escalation. Yet, despite his hesitations, he publicly supported Hitler's move, not wanting to appear weak or risk alienating his powerful ally. Mussolini's subordination, and Italy's military failures as the war progressed, Mussolini's reliance on Hitler became more pronounced. Italy's military efforts were disastrous, particularly in Greece and North Africa, where Mussolini's forces faced severe setbacks. Rather than admit defeat or seek a different course, Mussolini turned to Hitler for assistance, solidifying Italy's role as the junior partner in the Axis alliance. The more Italy struggled on the battlefield, the more Mussolini's desperation to align himself with Hitler grew. Hitler, while frustrated with Mussolini's repeated failures, recognized that maintaining the alliance was strategically beneficial. Germany had to intervene in North Africa and Greece to bail out Italy, and Mussolini's grandiose dreams of a new Roman Empire became more of a burden for Hitler than an asset. Behind closed doors, Nazi officials ridiculed Mussolini, and even Hitler began to view his Italian counterpart as more of an embarrassment than a true partner. However, Mussolini, driven by his desire to be seen as an equal to Hitler, continued to push Italy deeper into the war, even as the Axis powers' fortunes began to turn. Mussolini's decline and Hitler's dominance. As the war dragged on and Italy faced more defeats, Mussolini's personal and political deterioration accelerated. In July 1943, following the Allied invasion of Sicily and mounting internal opposition, Mussolini was overthrown by his own government and placed under arrest. His fall from power was a dramatic moment, but it wasn't the end of his story or his relationship with Hitler. Hitler, who still valued Mussolini as a symbol of fascist unity, ordered a daring rescue mission to free him from captivity. In September 1943, German commandos, under the leadership of Otto Skorzeny, successfully liberated Mussolini from his mountain prison. However, this act of loyalty only underscored how far Mussolini had fallen. He was installed as the puppet leader of a Nazi-controlled regime in northern Italy, the so-called Italian Social Republic. But by this point, Mussolini was little more than a figurehead under Hitler's thumb. The end of Mussolini. Mussolini's alliance with Hitler continued until the very end of the war, but it was clear that the dynamic had entirely reversed. Mussolini, once the mentor and symbol of fascism, had become subordinate to Hitler in every way. As the Axis powers crumbled and Allied forces closed in on Italy, Mussolini's fate was sealed. In April 1945, as German forces retreated from Italy and the war neared its conclusion, Mussolini attempted to flee to Switzerland with his mistress, Clara Petacci. However, he was captured by Italian partisans and executed on April 28, 1945. His body was later hung in public as a symbol of the fall of fascism. Mussolini's obsession with Hitler had ultimately led to his demise. What began as a political partnership had transformed into a personal fixation, one that led Italy into a catastrophic war, drained its resources, and cost Mussolini his life. Conclusion: in the end, Mussolini's fixation on Adolf Hitler was one of the most significant factors contributing to his downfall. Once a leader in the fascist movement, Mussolini's increasing dependence on Hitler's favor and approval turned him into a secondary player in a war that he had helped ignite. His story serves as a reminder of how personal ambitions and misguided alliances can lead to disastrous consequences, both for leaders and their nations.